Namaskar, everyone. I hope I'm audible. Namaskar. I'm Biswajit Dutt, the moderator of this program. We at Voice of India are proud to bring you an online book review of J Sai Deepak's India That Is Bharat, Coloniality, Civilization, Constitution. About the speaker, Shalini Rawat ji is an accomplished editor, translator, and a storyteller with over 3 decades of diverse experience. Her career spans teaching, literary criticism, and broadcasting as a renowned RJ and a voiceover artist with All India Radio. Passionate about nurturing literary talent, she mentors emerging writers and poets, enriching India's cultural landscape through her insightful contributions. I would like to invite Shalini ji to kindly take the spotlight and start the presentation. Shalini ji.
Thank you so much, Biswajit ji. Yes, so am I audible and visible, and is everything
Yes,
okay
you're
at
audible.
my end? Yeah, thank you. And a very warm welcome to all those present today. So J Sai Deepak's Bharat, or India That Is Bharat, the way he describes the country and the way he goes into the depth of the literature that he has, gone through in order to just mine this concept is amazing. And that's what attracted me to this book. And when the Voice of India Academy, in fact, Biswajit ji, on behalf of the Voice of India Academy, was we were chatting, and we were kind of trying to narrow down on a book. I thought that J Sai Deepak ji would be a very good choice. Apart from the fact that I am a huge fan of his, and the fact that he articulates himself very well. He's a Tam Bram, intellectual to the core, and also that he touches whatever he turns it into gold simply because of his civilizational sweep. So he doesn't just, it's not just a touch and go thing. He simply, in one sweep, and it's his lawyerly attitude, the precision with which he um, approaches the subject and then the arguments. They are usually flawless, and if at all you may find any flaws in them, he's always open to counter arguments, and he does that very well. So he's one of those stellar, characters who have in today's world, or let's say in India today, although I would call it the world because um, he's right now somebody that people want to look forward to on a global platform. So I would call him a global character, a global speaker, a global writer, an author of that stature. Um, and he has given a voice to the people of India. And if you insist that no, this is not true, because were the people of India voiceless before people like J. Sai Deepak came in? Then, when we dissect this book today, you shall arrive at conclusions of your own. So, let us just begin. And before I begin, since I'm a storyteller, let me begin with a story. So, this is one of my favorite anecdotes. It comes from one of the Upanishads, and it's called Who's the Tenth Man? And I'm sure you must have heard it as a story when you were younger. So there are 10 simple lads belonging to a village who want to go and watch a fair that is being held in some other village, which is across a river. And now the people, because they're all friends, and their parents and the community, the village community, is a little skeptical if they'll be able to manage on their own. And, so they are given a lot of instructions. They're given tons of instructions. They are young boys. And they are given a lot of instructions. Oh, you have to hold each other's hands and cross the river. And then when you reach the other side, you have to ensure that you count, take a head count, and then only then move, forward and attend the fair. So off they go, and as they approach the river, they hold each other's hands, and now they start crossing the river. Now, after they have crossed the river, they reach the other side, and now they want to take a head count. So one of them volunteers to take the head count, and he starts counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh my God. He doesn't count himself because he has those 9 people standing in front of him, and he starts counting them, and he gets a total of 9, and he's very concerned about where did the 10th boy go. So now he's a little shaky. And his friend says, oh, don't worry. Maybe you don't know how to count well. So let me do the counting for you. And he says, you come and stand in the queue and I will do the head count. So the second boy takes the lead and he starts counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are now again 9 of them. And now this boy is also very disturbed. So now, by the time all 10 of them take the head counts, they are almost on the verge of tears. Fortunately for them, some villager is passing by, and he just wants to check in with them and ask what is their dilemma. And they tell him, oh, when we started off from the village, there were 10 of us, but now there are only 9, and I don't know what to make of it. We don't know what to make of it. So he understands what the problem is. And he says, okay, let me help you do the counting. So whichever boy is there standing, taking the head count, he says, okay, now let me hold your finger and I will show you that there are actually 10 of you. So he holds the boy's finger and with his other hand and starts the count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And they are so happy. They are so happy that they start shouting immediately, oh, we found the 10th boy. The 10th boy has been found. So this is actually the state that we are in. Our philosophical literacy has kind of plateaued, and we are in a state or at a stage where we are very unsure of who we are. And the reason is, as J Sai Deepak tells us, is that we have been listening to others' definitions of who we are. And that will never give you a feeling of conviction because that definition will never come from within. So over and over again, the others have defined us. The others have set up apparatus for us to resolve our problems. The others have shown us the way. By these others, we mean the colonizers. And we shall see how J. Sai Deepak lodged himself on this journey. And this is his first book. I have the book here. I have the text here. Much page marked, but here it is for your perusal. The title of it, India That Is Bharat. It's got a beautiful cover page. And in the introduction, he tells us that, first of all, about the title. The title is about India That Is Bharat, and it is Article 1 of the Constitution, which begins with India That Is Bharat, and yet we have forgotten what is Bharat. So Bharat, the word Bharat comes from the Sanskrit roots, which is Bha and Rat. It's a Sandhi. And Bha means light, And Rat means devoted, or Rat could mean seeped into, or Rat could mean giving out, because you're so full of it, you're giving out. And Bha means light. So a seeker of light, one who seeks light, one who is full of light, one who gives out light. That is for a person, and Bharat as an entity is a country that does all of that. So Bharat versus the word India, that we have conveniently now, stuck to so much that we sometimes forget ourselves as Bharatvasis. So J Sai Deepak starts his journey by saying that he gives his personal, his delve shot into the past, where he was a student of engineering, and then he came across some branch of Ramakrishna Mutt, and then some writings of Swami Vivekananda, and then he did some serious introspection and realized that he needed a little course correction, that engineering was not um, engineering was not exactly what he wanted to do with his life. So he had a change of heart, a change of plans, and he decided to go into humanities, or basically law. And that's how he entered the field of law and started practicing as a Supreme Court lawyer. But that came later. Even as he was studying, he mentions a time when on the campus there was a lot of, a lot of ruckus created about certain sections of society by other sections of society. People who were probably majorities in there, and were being marginalized, and stuff like that, that happened, that he had no answers to. So born and brought up, no, Anshi, I have no idea when his next book is going to be launched, and thank you, but we will take the questions in the chat later. So yeah, two of them are already out, and the third should be out. Looking at, the way he's such a prolific writer and so clear about what he wants to put down on paper, that I'm sure it'll be out soon, and we will all look forward to it. So as he was grappling with these questions, and side by side studying whatever he could lay his hands on, he came across the writings of Dharampal ji, Sitaram Goyal ji, and Meenakshi Jain, and a lot of historians. And this was his eclectic, independent reading that I'm sure all of us very learned people here try to do on our own. Whenever there are questions that brew within us, that arise within us, but we do not find answers to in the mainstream media. So it went on like that, and it was only when the Swami Ayyappa temple case came up, that there was a group of women who approached him, and they wanted to take up his case, and take up this case for them on their behalf. And then he said that. What I was amazed by was the umbrella term under which they had grouped themselves, and they called themselves ready to wait. Ready to wait for what? Ready to wait for the decision to not be let in, because they had this Indic consciousness that Ayyappa Swami is a lifelong bachelor. He's a brahmachari. And that is the reason why women were not allowed inside the temple premises for these so many years, hundreds and thousands of years. And there should be no change, because the deity has a right to be worshipped the way he or she wishes to be worshipped. And ultimately, the Supreme Court ruled in their favor. And this set him thinking. Then there were other cases. There is still one that has not been pronounced an order upon. That was by the late Swami Dayanand Saraswati ji of the Arsh Vidya Kendra. Then there are so many other cases where he realized that uh, we do not have a sufficient philosophical scaffolding left in order to articulate what we want to articulate. And there are gaps in the narrative, the historical narrative that has been passed down to us since independence. And then he started his independent research, but just before that, and how this book came about is he was called to address a seminar to speak on the Constitution in April 2020, and Dr. Indu Vishwanathan was the person whose brainchild the entire thing was. And when he finished speaking, she suggested that she suggested certain authors who had already, you know, zigzagged across this landscape that he was just setting foot on, and had really, plowed through a lot of treasure trove of information and come up with stuff that made a lot of sense for J Sai Deepak. And then he began his independent study, and that is when this first book came about. The second one, of course, is about India and Pakistan. So this one, the range, I will start with the PPT because that will better help us and guide us through the discussion, because the book is very, very huge in its scope, very large in its scope. So I shall start the sharing. If you could please enable screen sharing for me, Biswajit ji.
Yeah, just a moment, please. You can do it over there. It's the green
Yeah,
one.
that's what I'm doing. And
Okay.
it still says host disabled participant screen sharing. So I am not able to.
Just a moment. Just a moment.
Yeah.
Please try it again.
Same message, Biswajit ji. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. And I can click OK to it. That's
Please
all.
click on the share. Sujit, please click on the share button.
Now it's done. I think, yes, now it's done. The share button I did click on, but it wasn't allowing me earlier. Now it's done. And it'll take a sec for this thing to move away before I can. Okay, so now I can begin the slideshow. Okay, so just if one of you could give me a thumbs up if the screen is visible. I've just the title on display right now. Thank you. Thank you. So what was the objective of writing this book? The primary objective is to trace the impact of coloniality. So there is a lot of literature available on the effect of coloniality on India. However, very little available where it takes a break from the past. So in order for us to assert ourselves, the definitions that we need, the way we need to define ourselves or our country or our culture or our values or our identity, or even write the constitution. That's his acme. That's the acme that he touches, the highest point that he touches at the end of this book, where he says that even as we wrote the constitution, okay, we were guided by coloniality, but we were influenced by it also. And what impact it had on the constitution that we have today. So that was the primary objective, because he was a lawyer. So this is divided basically into three sections. The first section is about coloniality. The second is about the civilization of Bharat and how we have been kind of, limited to calling ourselves a nation state, and why we should not do that, because we are not a nation state, we are a civilization, and a civilization differs vastly from a nation. And again, as I said, the last two chapters deal with the constitution. So 5 chapters for coloniality, if I remember, yes, and 4 for civilization and 2 for the constitution. This is the scope of the book. It starts from the age of discovery and it ends at the colonial laws. And this is where the sequel takes on. After this, you have the sequel, the India and Pakistan thingy, and that's how, the second book takes on. So I've kind of just taken a arbitrary, a kind of a random definition from the net, which says India that is Bharat is a legal phrase from Article 1 of the Indian Constitution, stating that India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. It signifies the adoption of both names India from its colonial past and Bharat, an ancient indigenous name, recognizing the nation's dual identity and the blend of its modern legal framework with its ancient heritage. And even this is problematic. Why not only India, or why not only Bharat? So there were votes for either or, there were votes for neither, and there were votes for both. And then how we ended up choosing both. However, even as we say that this is conciliatory, or we're trying to find a middle path by choosing both the names, this construct in itself is very problematic. This construct of India that is forward-looking, that is rational, that wants to develop and that wants to move forward, and the term Bharat here, which is pitched against India, and therefore automatically becomes something that looks at the past or revels in the glories of the past, or takes all its motivation from history. So we will look into that later. I just picked up this random definition because the beauty of the concept that he has introduced here, it's not him introducing it actually, but he has delved at in length over here. The term is decoloniality. And decoloniality is a very, very important term because it is something that has made a complete break with post-colonialism. So as students of literature, I was one, and we were fed, I mean, I read tomes upon tomes on post-colonialism, and a lot of my review work for newspapers, for journals, was on marginalized sections of society, taking into account the post-colonial theory. So post-colonialism is something that, you just make a sherbet of and you drink because you are in the humanities. But the decolonial part is something that enables you to see that post-colonialization or post-colonialism is nothing but also another lens, another layer of lens, and you are still looking at your country and yourself, your identity, your politics, your religion through the colonial lens only. There is still not a complete break. So you need that break. So that is about the title. And this is the quote that I picked up for the introductory slide. It says, European coloniality is like a matrix. One just needs to become aware of it, after which it is impossible to unsee it, especially in matters of religion, polity, education, economics, and the law. So today, as we try to unpack this book and a lot of terms that are inside it, this one important term, decoloniality, if we manage to understand this particular term, we will, or our perspective towards uh, towards the European colonizing societies or even ourselves is never going to be the same again. So it's not only religion that we will look at with fresh eyes, or polity, or education, or economics, or law. We will look at ourselves with a pair of fresh eyes. So that is what we hope to do, and let us begin in right earnest. So I'm just going to use these as pointers. So the chapter 1 deals with 4 terms. There are 4 terms that are discussed here: colonization, colonialism, coloniality, and decoloniality. So normally these would scare away, or somebody who's not a scholar, research scholar, or has a bent of mind that is very academic, it would scare away a lot of people. However, if we don't unpack these terms, we don't know where we are starting from. So in order to start at the right with the right foot forward, let us start with colonization. This is something that we are all aware of. Colonization is a process wherein powers from outside come into a country, enter a country, and colonize it, and they assume power over it. Now, this is something that we have seen. We have seen happen. We have seen countries throwing away colonizers. This is something that we can witness. However, the policy of colonialism, which is very insidious, that is something that we have not witnessed and which we cannot comprehend with the lexicon that we have been offered by the colonizers. So colonialism is a policy that was thought of before and created along the way as the colonizers entered into Asian, African, and South American countries. They perfected it, they tuned it, and the policy and the coloniality mindset that it created was so strong that although we don't have the colonizers with us physically, and we feel that we are no longer being influenced by anybody who ruled over us in the past, we are actually perpetuating the same mindset. So colonization is the process. I've given them in one word terms, captured them below the bold thing. Colonialism is the policy that decides, okay, how we go about colonizing a place. And coloniality is a mindset that you leave behind in the inhabitants, in the natives, in the indigenous people of the place that you actually physically leave, so that even when they are they think they are free or independent of you, they will be serving your aims. And decoloniality is, I mean, all these things I've made up on my own. This is, I think it means lay down the colonial burden once and for all. So you have to unburden it, you have to unpack it. The mindset is still very strongly with us. And so defines the 4 core terms and argues that language isn't neutral. The vocabulary, one sec. The vocabulary of modernity carries Christian European priors that normalize colonial hierarchies. Deepak frames coloniality as the mindset that survives political decolonization and continually shapes norms, knowledge, and being. So today, what we call is normative, what is normally happening in society. We will not ever credit that to people who left the country 75 years ago, almost a century ago. We will say, oh, this is something that has come about later. Our behavior, our ways of thinking, the way we acquire knowledge, the knowledge that we acquire, the way we put that knowledge to use, all of it has been shaped by our political masters. So that is the insidious nature of coloniality. And the second chapter, it deals with the discovery of coloniality and the birth of decoloniality. So if you do not experience something, then you cannot articulate it. So for you to experience something or to know that you are experiencing something, you first have to find a lexicon for it. Fortunately or unfortunately, for us as Indians and for a lot of Latin American countries and some parts of Africa, we used the colonialist language to discover, oh yes, we are being colonized. However, and we went through a lot of phases after that. So there was the phase of modernity, which begins with the Reformation in Europe. Then there was postmodernism. Then there was the colonization process. Then there was the post-coloniality. It was at the, during the phase where we were discovering that, oh, we are out of coloniality. That is when we were just discovering what coloniality actually was. However, we had not delinked from it completely. So chapter 2 just, tells us about the roots of coloniality. Then chapter 3 is all about coloniality, yes, but also indigenous faiths. So what happened to, let's say, the 2000 plus American indigenous peoples that lived in America before the Europeans arrived? And what faith did they practice? Or even for Africa, where the most of it was a tribal society, if not all of it, what happened to their faiths? Who are they? Who were they? And where are they today? And how come something that was entrenched in that land for centuries, maybe millennia, was wiped out? So how they were co-opted into wiping it out is what we will also study here. And also coloniality's relationship with nature, how devastating it was for nature, and also for the indigenous knowledge systems. So all of this happens in the third chapter. So it says it contrasts Indic relationship to nature knowledge with Christian theological frames, claims European universalism reclassified Indic faiths as religions in the Abrahamic sense, flattening practice-based dharmic traditions into belief systems fit for regulation. So of course they were colonialists. Of course they wanted to simplify matters. So if you want to simplify matters, you pick up the structure or the paradigm that is closest to you in your understanding. So in the Abrahamic sense, there were three religions when the colonialists came in, and they applied that same to all the faiths that were being practiced in India at the time. And as we unpack a lot of it, there will be very interesting observations about Buddhism and Jainism and Sikhism and how they were made into complete religions, and not only religions but rebel movements from Hinduism, and thought of being as a break from the past. And why did this happen in the first place? Okay. So after this, we have in the first section itself, chapter number 4, which says entrenchment. So how did the administration, how did the economy, how did they codify this structure? So we know that it was just a couple of merchants who came to India to trade. Of course, with the latent intention to one day colonize it, or to well, let's say, put it mildly, to enlarge the scope of their greed someday. So when that shift happened, we believe that from the company to the crown, it was basically done for administrative purposes. But actually, the colonization project was just intensified. And there was nothing like a rational, true, justice-loving, ruling person at the top. They still thought it was a civilizing mission. and it still had ecclesiastical roots. So that was it. And the last chapter in the first section deals with decoloniality, indigeneity, subjectivity, and relationality. So it says there is a method to the madness. And the method says you have to recover indigenous subjectivity. So who you are has to be defined by you. There is relational ethics, because the compartmentalization that has happened in the name of coloniality, because it suited them to categorize or to wherever there were fault lines, to kind of make permanent fissures out of those fault lines, so which was not the case before. And so our ethics, or whatever the colonized society faced, were or held, were beliefs that were relational. And then we need plural ontologies rather than slotting Indic or all colonized experience into liberal, secular, Protestant molds. So this is something that has done a lot of harm to our polity and administration and philosophical basis as such. So there are people who are liberal, there are people who are secular, and then there are people who are not, and why this came about. So there were some terms that I picked up, but what is important here is in this entire first section, is that how did it come about? So what happened was that as the people who were colonizers, they came in, and there are papal bulls that are mentioned, that are quoted in the book, which says, okay, go forth and exploit the land, because in the pyramid of ecclesiastical beliefs, the humans or man is at the top, and everything else is subservient, or everything else in nature is meant to be explored and exploited by men. So there were papal bulls given. There were there was a free hand given to the people who came in here, and they said, okay, go forth, and you can, whatever people that you meet, try to coerce them, or if not, try to overpower them and use the lands, and go ahead and do all of that. So there are actually, there's all of that stuff quoted in there. And as you slowly start entrenching yourself, embedding yourself in the system, slowly impose a system of education. And what will that education do? That education will be the basis for centuries even after they would never thought that they would cease to exist, but that would be self-perpetuating. So what will that education do? That education will give the indigenous people a view into their history. So how they were in the past will be dictated by what is being taught to them. And what will be taught to them in terms of their history is that you were a proper wasteland. There was nothing really happening. You were just uncivilized savages fighting amongst yourselves. And this narrative was set all over the world. And so then the white man came in, and the white man not only gave you education, but the white man also gave you tools, gave you skills. And now what happens in the future? You chase what the white man does. Then we move on to what happened to the indigenous peoples. They were suppressed in many ways, in myriad ways. So so there are instances of evangelization, which was actually the true motive. So you go forth, you spread the word of the Lord. And what happens when you evangelize and people resist? So because they are infidels, so you have people who are Christians and people who are non-Christians. So they are Christians, people with souls, and people who do not follow the book, or non-Abrahamic religions. They do not follow a book, and they don't know what they are following. So obviously they must be subhuman. So if they are subhuman and they come in the way of the spreading of the word of the Lord, then they must be definitely done away with or be subject to dehumanization. So all of that was done. And if they resisted, that was done. Even in cases where they wanted to get inside the fold. So there are instances of voluntary conversions by communities in Americas, and in Americas, a lot of tribes, they decided en masse to join the evangelists and or the word of the God, as they say, the book that as they say. And but what happened with them? So as it is, they could not resist the diseases that these colonizers brought with them. The way of life was very anti to the life that they had been leading, so they probably succumbed to that. And whatever little percentage did survive, then later succumbed to the education that was imparted to them. Another thing that they did this was by creating racial categories. So there was categorization on pseudo fake racial theories. There were martial classes, for example, martial races notified in India, and whatever peoples or communities did not suit the idea or the structure of the colonial master, they were categorized or notified as criminal races. So that is what happened, and most of these were imposed. So they existed as categories, but they were fluid categories. So we all know that no king could afford to have in the Middle Ages, because the population was such, they could not afford to have permanent soldiers in the army at all times. So a lot of them were permanent and a lot of them were on call, from where we have this word freelancers. And so farmers would double up as soldiers, and potters would double up as soldiers. However, when you say that no, there are only some people who are good at war, then you kind of create fissures in the social structures there. Then missionary activities and conversions, of course, happened. They were they were the substratum on which all this happened. And the most important were the framing of the terms modernity and secularism. So, this is what Sai Deepak also at another place amusingly narrates. It's through an anecdote. And he says that when I was defending the IPA, I was fighting the case and defending that group of women for the Ayappa temple. He says I didn't mind jabs like male chauvinist or somebody like that. The jabs that were thrown at me were terms like traditional, orthodox, um, not modern, and irrational. So he says, I had to unpack these because I was fighting for a temple, for a deity. If that is not traditional, then what is? I was obviously defending a view that had been in place for centuries. If that was not orthodox, then what was? So I was actually doing what they were using as pejoratives against me. So it was being used in a pejorative sense, all these words that were being thrown at me. And that is when he says I started unpacking and I realized these terms like modern and secular came in from, and these histories are very interesting. So the term modern, for example, I'll just pick up quickly, and it says the term modern, for example, was first used in northern Italy in the 6th century, and it was used only for sculpture. So it only meant a different style of architecture. Then slowly towards the 14th century, when Dante also used it, he meant it as new and as a break from the past. However, slowly it solidified to mean something that was new That was a break from the past, but that was better than the past that had gone by. So the past was viewed in a negative way. There was a negative connotation to what had gone by. So traditional slowly became irrational, narrow, parochial, um, having a silo-based approach. Whereas modern meant being rational, being open to new ideas. So slowly, how these terms were, they gained currency and they were solidified to mean something else, and how they came slowly to be synonyms of what the white man had brought with himself. Again, the word secular. Again, for secularism, it's slightly a little complicated if we have gone into history and read about the Treaty of the Peace of Westphalia. We would be aware of this. However, what it means, I will not go into it in detail because it will be very boring for the entire list of participants here who may not have such an interest in history. So what it boils down to was that the church very reluctantly, actually it did not really concede the rights, but slowly it so came about that the church had to concede the rights of administration to the laity as well as the kings. So the administration, which was actually before the Reformation, the states were only serfdoms of the Pope and the bishops. So the kings and the nobles were titular heads who ruled on behalf of the church. So slowly there came a separation between the church and the people who were ruling, and the rulers became actual rulers who could collect taxes in their own names. And that was the Reformation period, right? That's what we have read. And how now this new order was called secular. So we should not forget that the term secular still means that Christian people were the kings, Christian people were the subjects. And the way they were being ruled and the way they were being ordered was still by the church. So the term secular, even in today's time, does not mean being non-Christian or or non not being Christian. So secular meant within the fold of Christianity, you take a break from the church where you do not let the church dictate how you rule. However, the rules are set by the church. Of course, the broad guidelines are set by the church, and that happens even today. So the quote for this slide is, Bharat as a civilization was a reality. Reducing that reality to a mere talking point was expediency, not conviction. So how did we become just a talking point? How we became to be exoticized, how we became just, something that was just a wonder, the wonder that was India. The land of snake charmers and kings and palanquin bearers and stuff like that. So that was a lot of exoticization that happened, and that is not what Bharat was about. So a civilization is far wider in scope than only a nation with some objects that have some value in a museum, perhaps. So how did that come about? Okay. So the second section is talks about civilization. The sixth chapter deals with Bharat, coloniality, and colonial consciousness. So colonial consciousness is actually, according to Deepak, a very important term, because if you develop this consciousness, then you are less of a Bharatiya. So there are people in India, or let's say even if the people who colonized us, the colonizers, they would be sharing the land with us. If they were living here still, they would be sharing the land with us. And that would be no definition, or that would be no parameter to categorize them as Indians. Why? The pure reason is that they would have a colonial consciousness. For them, we would be indigenous people who are just standing in their way of exploiting the land and its resources. Or even the knowledge that we had was just meant to be exploited by them, and we were just people who were standing in the way. Whereas somebody who is indigenous respects everything that is connected with this land. So that is the very beautiful way in which he argues that coloniality recoded how Indians saw themselves, producing internalized shame, binaries, so modern and traditional, something that we discussed before, and a preference for imported epistemes over lived civilizational memory. So we still teach our children, in some parts at least, this old poem called Rain, Rain, Go Away, Come Again Another Day, Little Jolly Wants to Play. Because this poem was imported from England, where it rains a lot of time, and imported into a country which depended on the monsoon for its agriculture, and which at that time was a majority, it was an agricultural society. So the majority of the people practiced agriculture. So, stuff like that. So this has been imported. And it's not only the poor child who's left thinking, why am I being made to recite this poem? But, because this has been imported. So we don't even question it. So children probably do, but after a time when they are appropriated into the system, we stop questioning any such things, and we accept colonialism as a singularity. So it also presents Bharat as a civilization. It's not a mere nation state. So China has done this before us, and even Deepak, he kind of insists that we do it because um, what happens when we call ourselves a civilization? Right now, if you want to study about India, you will find a speck of it under syllabi, international syllabi, which where we are grouped under South Asian studies. But if you look at South Asia, it is India. And the impact of this civilization was all across South Asia. So China realized this, and China changed its lexicon, and they don't call themselves a nation state. They call themselves a civilizational state. And he is a proponent of that theory. So he says, whose group-centric social organization and dharmic grammar predates the Westphalian order. Urges reading modern India through that longer arc. So we have two arcs to deal with actually. So we have had two sets of colonials. We have had the British and the Eastern colonialists. So if we are going to try to define ourselves, we should not stop at what we were before the British came in. We need to go back all the way to who we were before the Middle Eastern colonizers came in, or brutally kind of stomped into India. So there are some terms that I picked up here. So the Christian colonial consciousness, the Indic ethos versus colonial distortions. So this we witness everywhere, that the Indic ethos versus colonial distortions is very much evident in we no longer have this as a subject, moral science. We used to have that as a subject. And the lines between, I remember, between sin and what was not sinful were drawn very, very harshly. Whereas we as a civilization understand that there are a lot of gray areas. There are no blacks and whites. However, the children were taught to be, to identify with either and be shameful or guilty if they did not belong to what was considered white or right. Then caste, tribe recast under the colonial lens. Yes, that is what happened a lot. A lot of tribes, as I said before, caste again took a big beating, and caste is a European word. We know that it's a Portuguese word. And it's not something that was there in India because the terms jati and varna are much larger and are much more fluid. And so as I said, fault lines were, if they did not exist, they were drawn. And if they did exist, then they were ensured that, the fissures created would eventually divide. And not only in the name of caste, but in the name of races also, states or communities of people would become politically detachable. By politically detachable, I mean slowly and slowly over a period of time, they would identify themselves as marginalized in a country which did not marginalize them at all, where they had complete right of speech and all the other rights that the rest of us had. And fed this narrative, and one day it would be easy to detach them. Or yeah, so we will stay with this. Then impact on the language and education. Bharat as civilization, not just a nation. I just explained that. Colonial Christian worldview versus Indic. So the Indic worldview is very different from the colonial Christian worldview. As I said, for example, if it's nature, the nature is meant to be explored and exploited. However, in India, so this is very interesting. When we used to worship our rivers, when we used to worship our mountains, we still do. We were called uncouth. And, again, if not the word savage, Brahmins or Indians or Hindus were considered slightly better than the Africans, by the way. And he quotes Immanuel Kant on that. And he says that these beliefs were so foolish. And now, when they have faced the brunt, when nature has hit back, they have still, stopped only at sustainable development. However, even that does not encompass the entire the canvas of how we had a relationship with nature. So it was very vast, the relationship that we shared with nature. It was interrelational, and there was a back and forth. You took from nature, but you gave it back to it too. So that did not exist in the scheme of things in the Christian colonial this thing, and it had an impact. Okay, so universalism versus pluralism. So that is one thing, globalism is being touted as we're calling ourselves one global community, and we are all a global village, and that means equal opportunity. It's actually hybridization. And it's actually universalism that is being, in the garb of the subterranean narrative still stays the same. So you do hit glass ceilings, if not in income, then there come a lot of, in a lot of ways, you do hit glass ceilings. So globalization does not mean that the colonizer and the colonized will one day come together and live as one equal, happy family. For the simple reason that the basis of colonization was ecclesiastical. Ecclesiastical meaning that it comes from religion, and from religion, that is Sai Deepak's version. So if it comes from religion, then you're always going to be the subhuman, the savage, which the Christian needs, who the Christian needs to save. So your soul needs saving. And till the time you don't give in, so they have unfinished business in Asia. So we are one civilization that we need to be proud of, because we are still non-Christian, even after so many years of colonization. So there is still unfinished business here. And that is what Sai Deepak says is very dangerous, because we do not see the pointers. We do not see what is being thrown at us in the name of universalism, in the name of secularism, in the name of giving space to marginalized. So the marginals are defined by them. The majority communities are defined by them. So this is also a construct that the colonizers put up, because they wanted to co-opt all those people who had who were the elites, so that the elites could speak for themselves, to the extent that there was a large section of elites which believed that not only India and other parts of the world also, that as soon as the colonizers leave, there will be total chaos. So we must hold on to them, and we must keep on giving them petitions. Please do this, but don't go away, because we are not capable of ruling ourselves. So stuff like that he talks about. And the quote that I picked up for this is: the spiritual character of the relationship between indigeneity and nature is an emotion the colonizer can exoticize but never relate to. So you can exoticize, so National Geographic and all these channels that we have seen for so long, they have exoticized the nature in all the colonies that they held, but they cannot understand the relation of the tribals or the relation of the indigenous communities to the because their sole purpose is to exploit the nature as well as these communities. So the communities' souls have to be saved, and the nature has to be exploited. So that is their simple relation with all those former colonies that they ruled over. So the next chapter is European coloniality and the Indic civilization, and how the debates on caste, tribe, reform, and religion. I'll just skip this because we have kind of referred to them till now. And we move on to Christian colonial consciousness, the Hindu religion, caste, tribe, and education. So we know what Macaulay did. So there were hardening of fluid identities, and rigid administrative boxes were made. And this legacy is what has persisted in public law and discourse. So whenever we take very compartmentalized, very airtight definitions of castes, communities, and tribes, that were the foundations, at least, for which were laid down when the colonizers were here. And this has led to a lot of tugs of war between majority national communities and indigenous peoples, as if the indigenous peoples or the tribal peoples are the true people who belong to the land, and the majority community does not belong to that land, because they had been already co-opted by the colonizers. So it's a created fissure. It's a fault line that has been created, that where if there existed one, then it had deepened definitely after the spread of colonizers' education. The quote for this that I really liked was: the Christian colonizer was acutely alive to the fact that language captured a culture's journey. Hence, the policing of native tongues. Okay, we have done a lot of academic chat, and I would just take a small detour and narrate a story. So there was this jungle outside a city, and a hunter once went and managed to capture one parrot. And he brought it home. The parrot was very sad, and he would not sing, he would not talk, he would not chirp, he would not do anything that a parrot does, and was not happy, basically. So, this hunter thought that maybe if I go into the jungle and, get a message, or have an exchange with the other parrots there, maybe this parrot will liven up and liven up my life through that. So he asks the parrot, he says, "Why are you so sad? I know you understand me, and I know you can talk. Would you like to give me a message for your brethren out in the jungle?" So the parrot doesn't know what to say. He is so sad, he cannot articulate his sorrow. So he just says, "Mum." And when he goes out to the jungle, then he sees a flock of parrots on trees, and he says, "Hi, I am the hunter. I'm the guy who captured one of you. And I asked him if he had a message for you, but he did not. But now I want to ask you, he doesn't talk. Can you please give him a message so that he livens up, so that he, is happy?" So there are all these parrots on different branches, and they start shouting at the hunter, saying, "You need to free him. He needs to struggle inside the cage." And there is one parrot who looks at the hunter and just shuts her eyes and drops to the ground. So the hunter is very intrigued. He goes back and narrates this story to the parrot in the cage, and he says, when I went there, all of them, they were shouting at me, but there was this one parrot. When I asked her what message should I give to the parrot at home, she just shut her eyes and dropped dead. So the parrot, on listening to this, the one inside the cage, he also shut his eyes and dropped dead, pretended to drop dead. So the hunter thought that probably it is the shock that has made him pass away, and he's very sorry for the parrot. And he opens the door of the cage, and immediately the parrot flies out, saying, that was the message that I needed, that I need to stand up for myself, or that I need to use deception in order to bargain for my freedom. So your tongue is intelligible only to you. So when it is policed by somebody who's a non-native, then elements that are introduced in there will no longer be intelligible to so you will not be able to articulate your feelings. For example, I am in the northern part of India, and in Punjabi we use a word for the hot winds that blow in the months of June and late May, and they are called Lu. Now, there is no word for that in English. So how would a native express the heat that is generated from these hot winds? They're just dry hot winds when the monsoon has not hit. And, they travel at a good speed. There's sometimes whirlwinds also in there. So there is no terminology that does not exist in the colonizer's language. However, if you are not allowed to articulate in your own language, this is what happened. Education was given, the indigenous people were put in boarding schools usually that were away from their communities. Then they were not allowed to speak their own languages, and the colonizer's language was introduced to them. So they actually forgot to articulate, to speak up for themselves, because what you do not have words for, how would you articulate that? And finally, the last two chapters, Coloniality, Civilization, and Constitution. So what Sai Deepak argues here is that our constitution at the base has all those Protestant ideas. So we need to do away with ideas and doctrines like essential religious practices, because somebody is being left out of these essential, or some practices are being called non-essential. So that is not the way to go. And it also authorizes the state to referee Hindu institutions, because the majority community is liable to be policed. Why is that so? Because it is being compared to the clerical community that ruled over the or that decided for the laity, for the people, before the Reformation came in. So all the clerical communities in all the countries that the European invaders went to, the clerical communities were demonized. In India, it was the Brahmins who took the beating. So if it is a majority community, then they were always the ones who were standing between you and the church, or in our case, between you and God. So they were the ones who were usurping your resources. So they are the ones who need to be demonized. They are the ones who need to be policed. So stuff like that, or a philosophical paradigm like that, over a period of time grows and then captures the imagination of the people, and then takes on a life of its own after that. So that needs to stop. Then the last chapter, it refers to the Standard of Civilization, the League of Nations, and the Government of India Act. So this is basically something that laid down the foundations of our constitution. And he here refers to the words responsible, how the British viewed us as responsible. So responsible government means you have to be adult enough as a nation to behave And only then can we allow you to govern yourselves. And that is not the view that we had for ourselves, and that is not the view that we have of ourselves definitely now. So all these reforms that after between the making of the constitution and after the act of 1919 happened were more or less pleased by the elites to allow the British to rule. And so this is what shaped our constitution majorly, and there are other major flaws that he mentions the constitution. But as I look at the time, I think we have done enough justice to the book, and so it's good research. Yeah. So I'll just close this, and then I will give you a summary of what I think about this. The fact that Article 1 begins India that is Bharat, its significance appears to have been lost over time. So this is what we have forgotten. We have forgotten that we were once Bharat. We are even today fighting or, trying to best each other and trying to woo or trying to ape the West and to prove to them, oh, we are worthy benefactors of what you of what you have given us, or we are worthy successors of the land that you once ruled. So that we should not fall over ourselves to do that, and that is happening because coloniality was a disruption of this great civilization called the Indic civilization. The civilization is an indigenous worldview. So it is an indigenous worldview, and this worldview is under strain right now. So we need to define this as well. And what is wrong with the constitution? So all these three sections. So this is basically the summary. The constitution is basically the colonial mindset which has been institutionalized. So every time we run, like how a priest would run to the Bible and says, buy the book. This cannot happen. It's not written in the Bible. We have substituted it with the Constitution, and we hold up the Constitution as sacrosanct. It is no longer a document that has to be pliable, or that has to adjust to the needs of the people who are evolving constantly, who as citizens have evolved a lot in the past 3/4 of a century. But it has become a rigid document, a tablet that must not be tampered with. Not really tampered with, but seen in a new light, or articulated in the way we would want it to articulate. So enough of tempering has gone on before. Sorry about that. But that's not what he means to say. He means to say that we need to look at our constitution in a new light. So that's his case. And the solution that he suggests is decolonial constitutional reform. So reforms have to be from the decolonial point of view. So this is his overall flow of argument. Coloniality is a mindset that the colonizers have left behind. What it has done is that it has disrupted the Indic civilization, and all that was colonial has now been embedded into the constitution, and there is a need for the decolonial reform. So this is the major flow of the argument in the book. So there is how do we put all these strands together? So okay, so I'll take this later. I think we can take the questions. I can stop sharing for now because we have one eye at the clock. So I could not see any of you. Now I can. And people who have stopped by and then stayed, a big thank you to you. And yes, if there are any questions, we could take that too.
So if somebody has any questions for Shalini, it was an awesome presentation, ma'am. Yeah, the recording will be available, Udit. So anybody has any questions?
Can I pose a question?
Yeah, sure.
Hello, Shalini ma'am. This is Arpita. Firstly, congratulations. It was a wonderful session of a wonderful book. So, my question is not exactly fully based on the book. It takes a bit from the book and a bit from the outside periphery. So, if you look at the way we, the Bharatiya people, we have looked into our history, or we have conveyed our history to the next generations. It has always been the saga of some victories and based on some rulers. So, going by that, would you, based on this book and the periphery and your own assessment, say that the entire construct of democracy is a misfit for India or the Bharat that as we know?
Thank you for the question, Arpita ji. And it's a very relevant question. But I think the writing of the book is the best answer. Had we been the parrots that they had wanted us to be, we would not have survived the colonization. So there was not one colonizer, there was not one wave of colonization. There were multiple colonizers and multiple waves of colonization for over a millennium. And so Sai Deepak also, dates the first wave to 700 or 800 AD, and then it went on and on. So all this would not have been possible. So, but what has happened is that in the intellectual or academic discourse, we have taken a leaf from the colonizers and we have rejected our oral, uh, what you meant to say was Indian knowledge systems. So our oral IKS systems. So even the stories that have survived, the sagas that of kings that are grandparents, stories that they narrated to us, that are even today sometimes not available in the texts or not available in the written form. So what has survived is usually stuff that is there in the textbooks. So I was having a very interesting conversation with a friend of mine who's an HOD of geography in some college and also a dean or something, and he says he very dismissively said he just earned his PhD actually from TIS. And he says, I want to work in IKS. कोई काम हुआ ही नहीं है. Nobody's worked there. I said, oh, really? He says, बस दो चार topics हैं where they have worked, and that is astrology and Vastu. And he named one or two. And the Vedic systems, Vedic learning. So that's all that, that has been focused upon. And I told him, I said, exactly, we need to work, but not with this dismissiveness, because what has been worked upon till now was what we could find written records of. So if people have managed to unearth or find archaeological basis for or historical evidence for or stuff like that, then we can construct an entire narrative. So we have seen that happen for the Holocaust. So I call it the big P because I'm from Punjab. And the big P was the partition of India that is still not spoken. So spoken about to the next generation. So while our grandmothers very vocally, very nicely and in how they broke it down and how they, presented identities to us is not the way we are viewing identities today or our children are viewing identities today. And that is the reason a lot of the younger generation is in conflict because we have not passed on those oral histories to our children. So, as you said, are you okay? I'll take your question, Mohanji. Just if I can just finish with Arpitaji. So, yes, we will be able to do that. But it has to be done at all levels. You can't expect the government and the universities to have departments for IKS. So, for example, I was involved in a committee to review some textbooks for a publisher. And I found so many colonial tags in there, even the illustrations, in order to make them appealing. The illustrations for grade 3 children had dolls that had rosy cheeks. And the bazaar depicted there was a South Indian bazaar. So you do not have people who have rosy cheeks there. Had it been Kashmir, maybe. So, it was out of place. But why was it there? Because whenever we want to make something appealing, especially for a child, we quickly, without thinking, resort to giving it European features. So, this is the mindset that we have to get rid of. So, the government and the institutions cannot do it on their own. We need to pitch in, and every person, because when this book that is being discussed today, when people start reading this literature out to their children, not this literature, but the literature that they inherited, and they understand the importance of that literature by virtue of reading this book, then you become a one-man army. So that is what happened. The Jewish communities conveyed it, and now you have the perpetrators of that injustice actually come to public platforms, international platforms, and ask for pardon. Okay, so I'll now open the chat because there was a lot of things that are going on. Okay, yes, Somnath ji has given
Namaste.
reference. Yeah.
I was wondering if if you have personally reviewed people like, and I'll use this term, they are not Bharatiya people, but they are definitely of Indian origin. For example, Neeraj Chaudhary, and obviously from the overseas Indian quote unquote point of view, V.S. Naipaul. He has, so I don't know how to characterize / critique those works, but they are very, very harsh, almost so opinionated that they reinforce the argument against which we are all kind of trying to fight against. That we are resisting. The way I see it, and this is my personal view, is that we are resisting this compartmentalization, categorization rubric that they have put across, because instinctively, I don't know how to attribute it. It could be Vedanta, neti. I'm neither this nor that. I am all of that or none of this. We discard all those easy black and white things. So I was hoping you could comment on that. Thank you.
Yeah, so Naipaul is a stable in if you study literature, which I did. So he's a staple in all the curricula that teach English literature in all across all Indian universities. So yes, I did study. So as I just said, and this is what Sai Deepak says. So there is a disconcerting feeling, even as the lecturer is extolling the virtues of the writers, the authors, the author's expression or command over language, or the way he has made the characters emote. There is something that you find disconcerting. So that is what we have to break away from. So these were people, unfortunately, see, there will always be Indians, even in India and abroad, who have been so assimilated into the narrative of coloniality that they will identify with the Sahabs who never left, right? We call them the brown Sahabs. And that was the idea. That was why we were, the English language was introduced to us in the first instance, because an elite, they needed to carry out their administrative duties. However, please understand this, and this answer also I'm quoting from one of Sai's interviews. He says there is a person who runs a party in Israel. It's called the Yes Gay party or something like that. And he calls himself a cultural Jew. And somebody asked him, why are you running this party when you do not even identify yourself as a religious Jew? He says, I did not, and I still do not. But Hitler kept on seeing a Jew in me. So the white man is always going to see you as an Indian. No matter how white you are inside, you will be brown on the outside or less white, right, than him. So for him, you will be a monkey who has mastered the tricks better than the others that he taught them to, but you will still be a monkey. So this is the mindset that we have to break free from. So this is his take on it, and I've used him. I hope I answer your question. Thank you. That was okay. Sunilji, I see your hand raised. Is there a question?
Madam, my question was, how can, as in the decolonization, be part of lived reality? For instance, regime change happened in Bangladesh, and I was signatory to a letter calling for a stop to the atrocities there, but they keep on happening in both parts, in Pakistan and in Bangladesh, and wars happen. Trump goes bonkers, but the world moves on. So how can and India is always caught in sort of an existential dilemma and debates. But practically on the ground, how could, as in this translate into lived reality? For instance, even J Sai Deepak is disheartened. We have a government in power which has done many things, but still it is not permeated into the consciousness as such. I I I hope I'm able to.
Yes, yes, you are. Thank you. I got the hang of your question. So yeah. So Vindhya ji has a comment. Even today, crores of people follow the Shastras, but our so-called intellectuals remain. Okay, the chat disappeared. Okay. I don't know. I mean, it's just disappeared off my screen. Yeah, so this is so there are a lot of people who are following the Bharatiya way of life. So Sai Deepak says that first of all, we have to, there is a relational, there is something called a relational definition. So we have to open ourselves up for this relational thing, right? Because right now there are things that are very compartmentalized here. Also, if I start from the point that you began your question with, that your lived reality is very different from what is there in this book. And that is entirely the point that the colonizers had in mind, that after they leave, there should be chaos enough and reason enough for them to be invited or for them to come back uninvited, either way. So they created enough fissures, they created enough, or they at least plowed deep into the fault lines so that, we'll never be at peace, for example. You and I both know that we will never be at peace with, let's say, even Pakistan. Let's even not touch Bangladesh, but Pakistan, we're never going to be peace at. So, people are praying, even if there's a cricket match, there is... there are enemy lines drawn even on the pitch, and even in the stadium, if not on the pitch, at least on the stadium. So it's gone very deep. So what has caused this has been you have to use the same tools. So when he says he's disappointed, what he means is the government can do a little bit. He, as an author, can do a little bit. Somebody else can do a little bit. But there were people who had practically looted the resources of the world and used those resources or plowed back those same resources into disintegrating those countries. So you need a lot of resources. Sorry, there were comments in between. I cannot take those comments because I'm already answering a question. Maybe we will just have the moderator, Biswajit ji, read out the comments later. So, as I was saying, this rise in consciousness has to happen. Sometimes there's an opposition party, which a lot of times, it's a kind of thing that they hold against the ruling party, the ruling regime, and they say, so these people are now defining what it is to be an Indian, what it is to be a Hindu, as if Hindus did not exist before 2014. So, yes, Hindus did exist, but we always existed with that disconcerting feeling that we had while we were eating Naipaul. So now that articulation is slowly, that lexicon is slowly entering the consciousness of at least some people. And all those people who were reading the Shastras and who were very close to their religion still did not feel the need to go out and defend their religion. Which probably when a lot of people are speaking, your tongue, your language, then maybe you will find the courage. But for that, you have to pull in your resources. So as a community, we have to come forward. And this is the appeal that he makes to the American Indians every time he goes to America. Please pool in your resources, and you are ideal citizens. You pay all the taxes, everything, and then why are you the first ones in the outer line for the visa restrictions? Why are you the ones that are targeted? So stuff like that, and for that you need to have a lobby. So you have to see the way the colonizer works, and you have to see what works in breaking this narrative that has gone on for centuries, even before. So our narrative has gone on for 1200 years. It's a long time in the history of any person. Okay, Mohanji's question is coming over and over again. I hope I answer your question, and I'll take up Mohanji's, and he says, are there any concrete efforts being done? So what concrete efforts do you expect? Who do you expect to make the efforts? As I said, the constitutional reforms, of course, will be taken up by the government. But at the cultural level, the praxis, who's going to reform that? This thing has to enter the consciousness of the majority, of the consciousness of the people. So the more we articulate and we talk, sometimes when we do not talk, or we are tight-lipped, or we just choose to stay silent, I'm not talking of aggression. I'm just saying voicing who you are, what your history is, educating your children about what is happening in the Tukre Tukre gang or stuff like that. What is happening? And when they have questions, researching and answering their questions, or when you have questions, researching and answering your own questions. That's how Sai has written this book, incidentally. So he has found all of this stuff in the canon of decoloniality. You can, so can you. So the European view of Hindus is instrumentalized through academia. Like, yes, you're very right. Our academia is busy supporting that ... Does not matter. Your voice is important. That is what you have to realize. Even if it is a small voice. Even if I don't know how many of us are there in the meeting. There are 19 of us. 30 had registered. There are 19 of us. If you take out you and me, Biswajit ji, then there are 17 listeners left. So even if these 17 people had some takeaway from the review of this book, and they go ahead and invest their time to reread, if they've not read it already, to reread this book and underline and see what answers their question and articulate it the next time a discussion happens at your bus stop, between colleagues in an office, that's how you disseminate ideas. So you are you're not understanding the power that ideas have. So the French Revolution did not happen on the streets. It happened in the mind of Rousseau. So 300 years after the French Revolution, you barely have any kings and queens left. Had you been in France at that time and foreseen and told the people there 300 years ke baad there are going to be no kings and queens or very few kings and queens left, people are going to rule themselves, people would never have believed you. And yet 300 years down the line, we feel it is perfectly normal to have a democracy. So the ideas have a lot of power, but they have to gain traction for that power. So over and over and over and over again, the greater the clarity you have, for their ideas, research into your own religions, reread them, and reread your texts, learn your languages. I am learning Sanskrit, and it is an amazing, amazing language. And there is so much that I learn, not only in Sanskrit, but about Sanskrit. And that is so beautiful. And that has, just learning that language has connected me with so many of my rituals that were out of bounds for me, because we in the North do not read Lalita Sahasranama and stuff like that. Whereas in the South, they probably still do, a lot of them do. So that, and then when I read about Lalita, and so it goes on. So there, it has to gain traction. तो कोई भी चीज जो the aeroplane, it keeps on going slowly on the tarmac, and you feel as if it's going to hit a wall, but just when the wall is in sight, it takes off. So for that inertia to happen, the earlier inertia to be broken and this momentum to happen, it's going to take a lot of time. Our forefathers who were fighting for independence, see, the moment India got independence, but within 12, 13 years, by 1960, most of the world, the countries of the world, had gained independence. So India's independence, it was a jewel in the crown, yes, but it was also something that spurred the movement of independence in so many countries. But before 1947, the people, the patriots who were fighting for independence, possibly thought it's never going to happen. And yet it happened. So every evolution in human thought is a matter of momentum. You cross a threshold and an idea takes a life of its own. And then beautiful things happen. So I am a diehard optimist, and you can attribute it to that. Biswajit ji, if you can please do me a favor and read out any questions, because they're in the chat box and I can't see them. And the scrolling. Somnath Sinha ji, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, there are some questions related to the Ishwaku dynasty, then this decolonization,
Ikshwaku
and
dynasty. Okay.
yeah, I mean, it starts in sometime in 6600 BC. So what do you expect? Then there is cycle of yugas, which have been questioned. So I think that these questions are actually not so relevant, because what happens is that it is not part
Okay,
of
you
the
are the
book, I think.
moderator. That's
Yeah.
yeah, they're not
If
part
you
of the
want to,
book, but let me tell you
yeah,
something.
yeah,
Yes. So this again comes from my independent reading. This is not part of the book, but our timelines were compressed by Western historians, because anything that goes beyond 2000 BC, in our a milestone in our civilization, if they accept that, then the theory that we are savages who need to be saved will lose all its hold, right? So they had to keep on compressing timelines, compressing timelines. So Ikshwaku rule did not begin. You and I, we both know that Lord Ram belonged to that vansh. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna that I was there before time, and so were you. And no, you were not there. Sorry, you were not there. I was there before time, and I have imparted this knowledge. First, I gave it to the sun, and then to Manu, and then Manu passed it on to Ikshvaku. So you can only gauge. Now, this is from my independent reading of the Bhagavad Gita. It's there in the Bhagavad Gita. You can look for it. So this reading spurred me on to read the Gita. And now I have that answer to that question to you. So Ikshvaku Vamsha did not begin 2600 years ago. That's for sure, because the theory of evolution and Darwinism and everything will go for a toss if you say that the world started evolving only 2600 years ago. So we know that for a fact that there is a huge lobby in archaeology that will not accept a lot of things. But there is evidence, and now the more research that is being done, and the amount of people who are coming forward who are so vocal. I subscribe to Meenakshi Jainji. You could look at her podcast. She's amazing. So there is an urge, even in the younger generation, to find out their spiritual roots, to find out their historical roots. Please make sure that you are, stocked up to answer their questions, so that whenever there is a binary created, a fake binary, they can stall it at their end. They don't need to come running to you, and you don't need to go running to someone else. That is what being an independent person means. And then develop the sense of community that Hindus do not have. So that's again, not only Hindus, a lot of other communities do not have the sense of community, because we are still in that colonial mindset. Yes, Varna is a mere profession at times, because she equates it with guilds in England, the Potters Guild, the Blacksmiths Guild. So she equates it with that. So there's their understanding of history. You have to separate the grain from the chaff. Please be the pioneers. Yes, Biswajit, any other questions?
I think we'll end it with Somnath Sinhaji. He wanted to ask something, and then we'll end this.
Okay, Somnaji, so
Namaste
patiently
again.
you
I'm
have-
monopolizing your
Namaste.
time. I have one question, and that picks up on the word of subjectivity and the lived experience of us as Bharatiyas. I just want us to just be very careful about these French guys, these post-structuralist guys, because their opening statement itself is that the author of the text is not the architect of its meaning, and we are not going to go there. We have to come up with a lived experience, and we don't want to, quote unquote, as a caution, systematize ourselves into another orthodoxy, like, Marxism is another orthodoxy, but it's basically Christianity. So you don't want to
Yes.
come up with another orthodoxy pyramid structure under
Yes, you're
this
very
whole
right.
effort.
Sai also mentions leftists, and he says it's a dangerous ideology, and you have to read the book to find that out. However, then I'll come back to what as I said earlier, what is your lived experience? If there is anything that is disconcerting in there, then please investigate at your end. And no matter how much they try to, kind of lead you down a wrong alley, they cannot do so without co-opting you. So you have to see for yourselves. For example, you talk of the French, and it was the French who first, allowed this binary in gender to start, this entire debate to start. And now, the recent thing that I've heard from someone who was staying in France is, in schools they are saying, do away with this nonsense. It's not him or her or she person or he person. You're either a boy or a girl. And there are facts in your biology notebook. Go and consult that. So where was that biology notebook before, and where were those facts before? So whenever a debate is sparked, there is always some mischief behind it. So use your wisdom. You have a lot of civilizational wisdom that these, the other colonized nations do not have. So go back to your wisdom, do your independent research, and I'm sure the moment you start doing it, you'll find communities such as these, which are patient, and where you find people who are learned, and they write good books, and then reviewers like me come in and review those books, and kind of try to deconstruct. It's a very thick book. So you see the kind of tags that I had to put in, and I still never got around to opening these tags. I wanted to cite read out from the book, but I just took up the bare basics, and just the skeleton of it took me 1 hour to discuss. I hope I have incited your interest enough for you to go and read this book, and it must be read. So there is a lot of effort that has gone in the research of this book. Please do that, and it's natural. It's okay. Even if you stray, it's okay. You get caught in structuralists, you get caught in anything else in Marxism. Okay, there's less of a chance for someone your age to get caught in Marxism now, but in any ism that comes along and professes to be the true religion. But when you are sure of your moorings, for that, again, you have to go back to something which is your religion. So don't believe this secular nonsense. So secularism in Christianity is a Christian God and you rule under his name, and everybody else is a minority. So that is the definition of secularism from this thing onwards. Thank you, Dr. Rajnikant ji. Thank you. No, I'm not on Twitter. No, I'm not at all on Twitter. And I do not want to get into controversy. So this is one reason. For very silently, I do my work because there are people like Sai taking care of the controversies that are happening. So one wrongly worded tweet, and there goes your repetition of a lifetime. So you can reach out to me through Biswajit ji. He can share if there's anything else that you want to discuss. I shall be available for that, but only on the academic front. Thank you so much. And I think we should call it a day now, or a night at my end.
Thank you very much, Shalini ji. It was one of the
Thank you.
best book reviews that we've been part of. Wonderful session. Thank you.
Fine.
Thank you. And I have
Thanks.
a great night, everyone.
You too, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.